And we are live. Okay. Welcome back. If you've been here before, welcome. If you are new, uh, I do this every few days, maybe sometimes every day, depending on how hot things have gotten, literally, figuratively. Um, Most of what I talk about here is global heating. Some people call it global warming. Some people call it climate change. You're going to learn eventually that I'm right. Uh, Global heating is what's happening in the realm of physics, and that's the only thing that's happening. Maybe you'll get some climate change. Maybe things will be warm at some point, but the planet is getting hotter. And so I talk about that almost exclusively here. It's like I tell my wife sometimes when she's trying to describe a problem to me, I'll say, look, I got one problem, and you've got one problem. It's global heating. And, that's not to shut down discussions. It's just to put things in perspective because that is really our major problem. I've talked about that a lot. See my previous work, and I'm talking about that today within the context of another, I'll put this in air quotes, problem, which is the rise of artificial intelligence. Uh, I may have one problem, which is actually, as I've described elsewhere, a wicked problem, uh, which is a class of problems that admit of no solution, uh, meaning no solution at all. Uh, Unless you're willing to take on new problems, additional problems, maybe even worse than the original problem. So I have one wicked problem, but I have many interests. I had a long career as a technologist and engineer. I have classical education and experience in engineering. I'm a scientist, a biologist. So I've had a varied career. And by the time I get to my age, most people have had a varied career. And since my most recent career was doing technology work and coding, I wrote computer software. I've been writing computer software really since the 70s, but I made a career of it at some point. Um, well, not since the 70s, more like the 80s, I guess. Anyway, I've written a lot of software. And all during that time, people were writing fictional accounts of what computers were going to be able to do. And of course, 2001, The Space Odyssey had HAL, the computer, um, and where that went. And artificial intelligence often played a role in writing fictional accounts of computers, and there's a really good reason for that. Computers that can't talk or be characters, sometimes characters for good or characters for evil. Computers that can't talk and have dialogue and be funny and be snide and sarcastic are just not interesting in a novel any more than a pocket calculator would be interesting in a novel. The character might pick up the pocket calculator, do a quick calculation, and say, "Ah, ha, ha, you see." But that would be it. It'd just be a prop, right? Here's the pocket calculator acting like a prop, and now we're done with it. Put it aside. But if a computer is going to play a pivotal role in a novel or a fictional movie or something, it needs to be able to talk and have thoughts of its own and have opinions and even have an agenda. So where we wanted to include technology in entertainment or in novel form, it had to have these characteristics. So we've been kind of chewing on uh, smart technology, sentient technology, Isaac Asimov had his the three laws of robotics, and the movie Blade Runner, the original, explored the distinction between human life versus human-like life in the replicants. And I guess the remake of Blade Runner even did more of that, although I haven't seen it myself. So we're kind of aware that this is out there. Fairly recently, and by that I mean really the last 6 months, the AI field took on a new life, and it. How to say this? Anything I say going forward from here is going to sound like hyperbole. It's going to sound over the top. It's like, this guy's nuts. How can you say things like this? He's a screwball, okay? I've been doing this all my life. I've been doing this all my life. Okay, I'm not a screwball. I'm a scientist. I only care about science. That's why my biggest problem right now is global heating, because that's science, baby. Okay, you can think it's a Chinese hoax or something, but no, it isn't. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's a planetary thing. It's a science thing. We learned about this through data analysis. Okay, we know what's going on. And if you don't want to hear about it, that's fine. The fact that you're here at all suggests that maybe you're willing to accept the science, or at least hear something about it. Um, the AI thing is science. They're doing experimentation. They're having breakthroughs. They're measuring performance, and it's not Moore's law, gigaflops, and it's faster and it downloads quicker, and I can run bigger games and the more real life 3D and all these those are not the considerations at all. Yes, they are using graphics cards to drive these things, but that's because the graphics cards do matrix algebra. Okay. Yes, they render images, but they use it doing matrix algebra. They do it using matrix algebra. So they turns out they can use matrix algebra to create AI. This is real science. There's numbers. There's real numbers, real math, real developments. And in the last few months, they had some crazy breakthroughs. Absolutely crazy. Just even the people having the breakthroughs are shocked, rattled. You know, what is this? What did we create? It's like a Frankenstein moment. It's alive. It's alive. What have I done? What is this? People are saying that some of these AI, what do you want to call them? You can't call them programs. They are not programs. Nobody writes these things. It is not software. I wrote software. I wrote probably 10 million lines of software. I know what software is. I know how these things are created. They write to themselves, they create themselves, and they're not even software. 40 lines of code makes this thing run. We don't even know how they're working. People who create these things, if that's the right word. Okay, again, they're not software. You don't create them. They basically create themselves. If you work in biological systems much, or even earth dynamic systems, you become familiar very quick with an idea called emergent properties. Emergent properties are things that emerge out of something more fundamental. A typical emergent property, which is quite relevant to this discussion, is a hive mind, like a beehive, or even a termite mound, or an ant nest. Hive minds. Hive minds are not anywhere in the insect colony. It emerges from the collective behavior of all the individual ants or bugs. Okay, all of them working together. This hive mind emerges from that. And scientists, biologists like myself, have been analyzing the hell out of this. Where does this mind thing come from? Is it chemistry? Is it the behavior of the individuals? Is it somehow that they're talking to each other? We can't see them doing anything, and yet there's an intelligence that emerges from this thing. It's a simple intelligence. It's not even something you would even recognize right away if you weren't studying it carefully. But there is intelligence in these things. There's even intelligence in fungal networks. And there's a kind of intelligence between the roots of trees and the fungal networks and the offspring of the trees. This is science that has emerged in like the last 5 years or so, 10 years or so. There's weird processes that go on that if you just look at the tree and look at the ground and look at the leaves and look at the flowers, you wouldn't see it. When you study it, there's logic. There's things happening. There's logic. It's geared. It moves. Things happen. And these things emerge from all this gearing. And what's happening with AI right now is no one wrote this. Nobody wrote this. The intelligence is emerging. It's just coming out of it. And it's got people back on the back foot. They're like, wait, what is this? This is not hyperbole. This is a thing. Now, the reason why I'm going to a lot of effort to say this is because people are talking now about how AI is going to absolutely alter the landscape of the human experience going forward from here, not 30 years in the future, right now, 6 months ago. Since 6 months ago, the handwriting is on the wall. The human experience is going to change almost in a science fiction fashion. We are now, life is beginning to imitate art. And we are now going places through artificial intelligence, and in particular, artificial general intelligence. We are now going places where we can't even see the horizon. And we're going there at a speed that we can't stop. Now, I could use that same language to describe what's happening with global heating. We are changing the Earth system dynamics. We have been dependent on this for ages, thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of years. We have been dependent on this. And we're not the only ones. We share this planet with for almost countless species, most of whom have never even been discovered and described. Thousands of millions of ecosystems, tens of thousands of species that are important to our daily lives. We share this planet with them. And we are now on our trajectory with global heating and our consumption of fossil fuels and the carbon emissions associated with that activity. We are now going towards a horizon that we can barely comprehend. And we are approaching it at an ever increasing rate. We are going to be upon that horizon. We're going to be over that horizon into a completely different form of existence on this planet, a completely different set of dynamics before we can even apply the brakes, if it turns out to be bad. And people in my line of work, people, climate scientists, scientists in general, mathematicians, physicists, they're looking at this and they're shaking in their boots. And people are doing computer science and working with large language models and working with all these AI contraptions and ChatGPT and GPT-4 and GPT-5. They're shaking in their boots. And these two things are happening now at the same time. Humanity is about to be challenged on two fronts simultaneously. Two fronts. Now, in theory, that gives someone like me two things to worry about. So now I have two problems I should be concerned with. Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. And but the way I do things, the way I think about things is I got these two problems. And they're both coming at me, and they're dragging me over some distant horizon that's actually rapidly approaching. Uh, how do these two problems interact? How do they relate? Are they really symptoms of the same problem? Could be. Is a solution to one maybe the solution to the other if they are interrelated in any way? And what would that solution look like? Discussions of the approaching AI event include a lot of hand wringing and hair pulling about um, people are going to lose their jobs. People who do certain types of work that is better done by computers are going to lose their jobs. The computers are going to do those jobs. And there's a lot of them. People who work with knowledge, people who spend a lot of time doing research, looking up, case law, looking up, obscure diseases, are going to find themselves out of work. And a lot of this has already started, by the way. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but I'll just roll a couple of things out. Um, it used to be that if you were a lawyer and you got some sort of an assignment, maybe it was a criminal case, maybe it was a civil case, and you had to look up all the relevant law and all the relevant regulations and all the case law and all the precedents and how judges ruled on this thing. You had to have a fairly large staff of assistants, essentially, who would go into your library. And you had this huge library with racks and racks and racks of legal books, right? And they would have to go through and they'd flip through the pages and they'd look for all this stuff and they'd make notations and they'd come back to you with the relevant material about how to approach this thing. And then as a lawyer who understands law, you would synthesize all of that gobbledygook into a coherent case. That's your job as a lawyer, a coherent case. Well, now all those books and everything is all online, right? Of course it is. That's all in databases. And now maybe you need one assistant to just quickly query and run a query of some kind. And the assistant, of course, knows how to use the system. They may know how to use the query language. They may be up now. partially able to code because they can write these queries in a particular way, and there's rules, and these have to be in brackets, and these things have to be in brackets, and it has to be all working together. And then you get your data dump, and then you got to go through the data and say, okay, that's not all of this is relevant. Oh, well, this is. So you have one assistant who's capable with technology and who has some skill to weed the wheat from the chaff, and that gets presented to the lawyer. Well, pretty soon, in fact, any day now, really, I mean, literally any day, the lawyer will be able to go to a AI agent, ChatGPT or something similar, and say, okay, and this would be a typical prompt, and you can do it on a keyboard, but eventually, of course, you'll be able to do it with voice. It'll be quite simple, and there might even be a website somewhere that enables this service, and they charge you, $200 a month or something to use their service, and their service will take your voice and make a text prompt and feed it to all these agents and come back with the results, and you don't need that staff person anymore. You just do it yourself. And you just talk to it and you say, give me all the relevant case law that, from the last 5 years, although, limit it to the US and Germany, because that's my current clients. They're in Germany, and summarize it uh, by relevance, and give me a score for each one, and have the score be based on, 1 to 100 on relevance. And I want relevance to be calculated on, how recent was it, and it's more relevant if it's a higher court, and it's more relevant still if it concerns a particular word, or a particular company name, and get back to me. And I want no more than 3 pages of results, and I want things listed by relevance, and I would like for you to put in for each item which parts of my query made it the most relevant, so I know if the relevance is actually important to me or not. Okay. And I want you to save the results to a file. And I also want you to save into the file this prompt that I'm giving you right now so that I can modify it later to change the query. Okay. And then you go and you get a cup of coffee and you come back and it's all there. It's all there on a web page. And you can you can keep the things you want, check off the things you don't want, modify your query, send it back, get another list of results, and then you can use that to make your case. And that could also be another AI agent. Okay, now take all this case law, please summarize the relevant points into a document that is suitable for presentation in a court. You take a couple of sips of your coffee and look out the window and think about, whether you need to buy a new putter for your golf set. And there's your document. So a lawyer's office with a library full of books becomes a lawyer sitting in his own den at his personal computer or on his laptop or even on his phone. Okay, on his phone, doing the work that a lawyer is supposed to do. Now imagine a client needs a lawyer to represent them in court, but they have exactly the same tools available to them. They have learned what lawyers do. Lawyers go to this website, lawyereasy.com, and they speak to the artificial intelligence, and it comes up with all this data and it summarizes it, and they took a class on it, and they've got a video that they watched, and a wife is home, and a whatever else. And so the client learns how to do these things themselves. And so now they don't hire the lawyer anymore, or maybe not very often. Maybe they hire lawyers for really difficult things, but for, casual things, contract disputes or whatever, they just do the research themselves. And then when they go to court, they represent themselves. Um, and the same thing applies to doctors, and the same thing applies to teachers, and the same thing applies to anybody who's doing research, and the same thing applies to anybody who's having to present data. So project managers, again, teachers, lawyers in court, the presentation can come from these machines, and then anybody who can read, essentially, and who can hand paperwork to a clerk in a court can do this, or can hand documents to students, or can hand something out. Okay. Your teacher maybe is not even a teacher anymore. Maybe your teacher is just a person who goes around to all the classrooms, and says, "Okay, this is what we're learning today. All right, let's ask our auto teacher what we should be studying on this topic." And you query the auto teacher, and then the students get the stuff, and then maybe you break them into groups and they discuss it, and you come back later, and the auto teacher also gave you a list of questions you should ask to see how well they've learned the material. And so you ask the questions, and the groups respond, and you're teaching group learning, you're teaching interdependence, you're teaching cooperation. And so, what are we supposed to teach? Right? You're using the lesson to teach this other stuff. So, you ask them the questions and they do really well. There's no grading, you know, either they're preparing themselves for life or they're not. And at the end of the day, they go home. And when the parents ask the students, "So what'd you learn today?" "Oh, well, we had a great group discussion, and I had to do some research, and I really learned a lot about elephant extinction rates, and I'm really interested in this topic now. And excuse me, I'm going to go on the computer. I'm going to watch a bunch of videos on elephants because there's some real problems with elephants now." And so, now your student is doing homework that they want to do. And there are no teachers in the classroom. There's just somebody who goes around and facilitates this learning environment. There may not even be hardly any staff in the school at all. There may not be a principal, a vice principal, a counselor, a job counselor. The kids just come to school. They let themselves in the classroom with a swipe card, just like they would to a corporate headquarters, and they go in there, and and maybe the students themselves facilitate it. What should we study? I don't know. Oh man, I saw a video yesterday on artificial intelligence. Oh yeah, I saw one too. Well, okay, let's study this. Well, that's what we're using right now is artificial intelligence. Yeah, but I heard it's really taking off. They got artificial intelligence in robots now, and I saw a bunch of robots playing soccer. Okay, that was a fake. That's just CGI. No, no, it was real. It was totally for real. Let's look at this. Okay, and then that's their lesson for today. And they have to look at uh, uh, deep fakes, and they have to look at uh, technology transfer, and they have to look at coding and what companies are doing this and why are they doing this, and they just spend all day, the entire day, just drilling down on this thing all day because that's what they wanted to do. Where was the teacher? Teacher wasn't anywhere. There's no teacher. Where was the principal? Where was the staff? They're gone. They don't have to be there. The kids swipe themselves into the classroom, take advantage of the technology, and go home. And they might go home when they're done. Well, that was great. That was a great man. You guys are good. I really appreciate it today. You people really helped me understand this. Is there anything more we need to do? Okay, I'm kind of tired. I'm really exhausted. This was emotionally draining, and uh, how about we just go outside and just unwind for a little bit, and then we can go home because I think we really nailed it today. We really did, and we just need to write up our progress today on the topic we picked. Okay, I'm going through this in detail because I just destroyed through narrative 2 careers, 2 career paths, 2 industrial segments. I just destroyed them in about 3 minutes apiece. I just destroyed them. Those people are done with current technology. Current technology. I was listening to a guy. He has a YouTube channel named after himself, David Shapiro. I've worked with guys like this in engineering circles, writing code for 25 years. Okay, he's a typical guy. Recognized him right away. I mean, by his personality profile and how he speaks and the things that he's concerned about. But he's been talking about AI. In fact, he even confessed in one of the videos I was watching that he's given up coding. He's given up everything else. He's just going to be a YouTuber talking about AI. And he's making lots of money and he's doing fine, and go to his Patreon and send him money. Okay, I guess if that works, pretty soon there's going to be an AI avatar, completely computer generated, with a YouTube channel talking about AI. And David Shapiro is going to be out of a job. Okay, good luck. I'm not an AI. Clearly, I'm not an AI. I'd be more together. I'd have more hair and my beard would be properly trimmed. So I'm not an AI. I think, as a quick aside, I think that that's a benefit. I think we're just going to have to get used to people being sloppy and incoherent and random and whatever people are, and we're going to get to like it. We're going to get like that guy that never trims his beard and he's going progressively bald and he's probably losing his mind. You should watch some of his videos. He gets so frantic all the time. And but at least it's a guy. Because no AI would act like that. No AI would look like that. Let's go watch this guy fall apart on YouTube, complaining about global heating. Here I am. So in 3 minutes each, I destroyed 2 entire industrial segments. Do I have to keep doing this? So David Shapiro did a video and he did some simple math, and I've done simple back of the envelope math on here. There are people who can do that. Okay. And he did some simple back of the envelope math. He started with some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, about how many different types of jobs there are in the US and how many people fill each type of job and what are the skills required for that job and what is the unemployment rate for that job. You can imagine what the BLS is coming up with, right? That's their job. They just sit around editing spreadsheets and loving their life, right? But anyway, he summarized some BLS data and he found 161 fairly high level job categories. I mean, there's tens of thousands of jobs, right? Uh, any one business incorporates 4 or 5 or 10 job types in that one business. Even an auto mechanic shop right down the street here has probably 2 or 3 different job descriptions, and that doesn't even account for the accountant, um, the facilities inspector who comes in once a year to look at the fire suppression system. There's a lot of job categories in a business, but BLS, he worked with BLS and he did his queries on the computer and came up with like 160 job categories. So he just looked at those and he scored those for how likely those would be to be replaced by uh, AI agents, meaning artificial intelligence, artificial intelligence acting as an agent for you, that you ask it to do something and it does it and it comes back with the results for you. It's your agent. Okay. So, how easily would these jobs, and it was 160 of them, he didn't want too big a list. How easily would these jobs be replaced by an artificial intelligence? And, you can imagine there's some limitations, right? These artificial minds are living in servers or on the cloud someplace. And, they can't deliver food to your front door. They can't deliver a pizza, right? They're not doing that yet. They can't cut your hair at the hairdressers yet. Uh, they can't babysit your kids at the daycare yet. See where this is headed? See what I'm doing here? Okay. Um, but he came up with it back of the envelope. And he says, "Well, this is kind of a ballpark figure. I don't know how accurate this is. I'm really just throwing spaghetti against the wall, making some decent guesses. But based on his personality and people that I have known like him in the past, their best guesses are usually pretty good because they just work with the data, work with the numbers, and just think things through. These are coders, okay? Coders make really good guesses. They're trained and they have the mentality to be able to focus on what's going on here. They focus on the thing. They focus, and he came up with an unemployment rate in the future based on those 160 job categories, an unemployment rate based on current technology of 82%. I'll pause to let that sink in. An unemployment rate in the future based on what current technology could do to lawyers, teachers, administrators, project managers, coders, librarians. It's a big list, people. It's a doctors. Okay. It's a big list. It is a huge list. And that's where he got 82% using current technology because that's all he knows. Now, someone like me, I can come along and I can imagine all kinds of extensions of that technology. I just gave you the lawyer example. I just gave you the teacher example. I'm actually pretty good at this. Uh, yeah, I've got a really active imagination. I can take an idea and run with it. All right, I can run that sucker out. Yeah, and I ended up with it took me 3 minutes, maybe 90 seconds to come up with a completely different educational model. No teacher in the room. Kids swipe a card to get in, and they do what they want to do all day, provided they have some results at the end of the day, which, by the way, is how most corporations work with white collar workers. You know, what do I do? I've been coding for 25 years. What do I do? I come to the office, I swipe my card, I get in, I go to my cubicle. There's a bunch of emails, and maybe there's some assignments I've been working on for a couple of days or a week. There's some new things that maybe I want to queue up. I go to my project planning dashboard and I pencil in some things. I'm saying, okay, these are my deadlines, and and my boss is down the hall in his office, and he's on the phone. He's talking to part of the team in India. Why is this not focused? That's weird. Maybe it'll fix itself. Here we go. My boss is over there. He's in his office. I see him maybe twice a day. And for the most part, I just do whatever I want to do. Now, I have to have this is really bothering me. Why is it doing this? Don't you hate technology? This thing is stupid. It needs some intelligence. I gotta fix this. Focus. Focus, my dear. It can't focus. Wow, that's weird. Anyway, so I guess this is going to be blurry until it figures it out. Stupid machine. So my boss checks in on me. He can see my dashboard just like he can see his own. So we have some idea of progress. He can watch my progress. I can respond to queries. And then at the end of the day, or maybe I go to lunch at some point, maybe I coordinate with my colleagues. We go to lunch together. And there's a notification that there's going to be a meeting tomorrow morning at 8. So I put a timer on my phone to make sure that I'm at the meeting and at the correct location at 8. No one tells me. No one comes to my cube and says, "Hey, there's going to be a meeting at 8 tomorrow morning." It just comes to me, and I just schedule it in. Okay. And then later in the day, there's going to be a conference call with the team in India. Okay, so I'll be there. And that's the topic. Okay, I'll do some research and I'll be able to report something on that. And this was a typical day for me for 25 years. This blurry is really bothering me. Why can't it fix itself? What do you make of that? What do you think of that? I don't know. I need a new machine. I need a better machine. 82%. Starting with coders. Coders are already using automation to do their work for them. Coders are going to be replaced. My son, who's in his 20s, said, maybe I'm interested in becoming a coder. I said, don't do it. Don't do it. And he didn't. He's doing something else. And I think his career path is probably better, at least for now. We'll see what happens. So how does this tie in with global heating? And why am I having this conversation? Well, what happens when 82% of workers today don't have a job anymore? Now, you would say, ooh, a lot of things happen. It's going to be really bad. It's going to be ugly. Let's see if I can fix this. It just can't focus. Why can't it do that? Here, look at the ceiling. It's broken. This camera's broken. I don't even know how it focuses. How does it even do that? It doesn't have a moving lens. It doesn't have a mechanism to focus. That's weird. Anywho, 82% of people are unemployed. If you had thought that you would be able to get people out of their cars, stop flying, stop traveling, stay home, well, you'd be wrong, because people love driving, they love flying, they love traveling, they love vacationing. But if those people are unemployed, where are they going to drive to? How are they going to get there? Well, how are they going to afford the gasoline? Okay. So all of a sudden, by throwing people out of their jobs, to some extent, you've saved yourself a little bit of a problem with carbon emissions. Now, you solve the problem from the bottom up. You didn't need a global treaty with China and India and all this to cut our carbon emissions. You just threw a bunch of people out of work. 82% of people, from what Dave Shapiro could come up with, and I really couldn't argue with it. His logic was sound, 82%. If you throw 82% of people out of their work, that cuts carbon emissions. We actually saw that with COVID. When people started working at home, they were still working, but they were working from home. They weren't driving and they weren't flying because nobody was flying. Okay. The skies cleared up, the pollution went away. There were fewer cars on the street. I'm telling you. We noticed. My wife and I both noticed. We sat out in front of the house and like, where are the cars? There are no cars. So does that solve your problem with global heating? Well, it might start to. For one thing, if people are not driving and flying, then they're not consuming fossil fuels. But also, if they have a lifestyle like working from home where they're not consuming fossil fuels, then if something happens to the fossil fuels, what would that be? I don't even know. Then they kind of don't care. Oh, gas is $20 a gallon? That's interesting. I haven't bought gas in 3 months, so maybe it's a problem for somebody. It's not a problem for me. They just don't care. Something else happens. If 82% of your workers are suddenly unemployed, suddenly might mean 3 to 5 years, right? If 82, which is pretty sudden, I think you'll admit, if 82% of your workers are now unemployed, then companies are making huge profits, right? They're not paying out salaries and benefits, and they're not having to hire people, which is a very expensive process. And they not only do they lose their employees, they lose middle management. I mean, why do you think companies were so intently interested in workers coming back to work? It wasn't the companies, it wasn't the board, it wasn't the CEO, it was the middle management, because they have nobody to manage. Their jobs are on the line. They're like, hey, I'm not managing anybody. They're all at home. We have all these automated ways of coordinating and having meetings and Zoom meetings and emails and all this stuff. And what am I supposed to do as a middle manager? Oh, it just fixed itself. What was that about? What am I supposed to do as a middle manager when there's no one in the office? I'm the only one in here. Why am I coming to the office? Because I'm trying to make the office relevant again, okay? I'm here in the office. I ask people to come to the office. They won't come to the office because of COVID. And now I'm about out of a job. So when you have 82% of your people unemployed or working from home, then because they're using AI tools, and they don't have to be in the office using AI tools, I can do that from home. I got internet. It's fine. Then your middle managers lose their job. And, well, what happens then? You don't need vice presidents to manage all the departments anymore because the middle managers are gone. So now you lose your vice presidents and your senior vice presidents. And pretty soon the CEO spends days at a time not talking to anybody. Sometimes, on the phone with a member of the board. And then pretty soon the CEO is gone. Well, you have to have someone who does strategic thinking. Yes, but we have software that someone developed based on ChatGPT and GPT-5, and it's called virtual CEO, and we subscribed for $50,000 a year to virtualceo.com, and the board all has accounts, and we go to virtualceo.com, and it's costing us $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money for software. Hey, but we were paying our CEO $2 million a year and getting exactly the same results. So we're just going to fire him, bye, and we're going to subscribe to this service, and the board will now run the company indirectly through CEO.com. And the CEO.com will tell the board what direction the company should go, strategic analysis, profitability, and resource analysis, and do that 10,000 times faster than a human, and do 1,000 times better of a work for 1/10,000th of the cost. So pretty soon, the company is just a board of directors with an account at CEO.com. And maybe there's some employees who still write code or still manage legacy systems. Maybe there's someone who just manages servers, just keep the servers running. And maybe that's not, maybe those people are contracted out. And if all of your business is running in the cloud at Microsoft Azure or you know Amazon Web Services or something like that, as most of them are now, then you haven't been managing IT infrastructure for ages. And pretty soon your board members don't even come to an office. And now you get out of your lease on your office. And now the board members all work from home. And then someone comes along, and then the shareholders come along and say, okay, so why do we have a board? Why do they have an expense account? Why do we pay these people? There's no good reason for that. We have virtualboard.com, and virtualboard.com, it looks at really high level stuff and does all the networking and figures out the big strategy and the liability for the company. And that data is fed to CEO.com, and CEO.com makes decisions about strategic decisions about what products to launch and how we're going to position ourselves. And then the output from CEO.com gets fed into um, you know the projectmanagement.com, and projectmanagement.com uses an agent to call up code resources and write code and deploy that to web services, and the whole thing, a typical decision by the shareholders, and maybe they get together every day to talk about what direction the company should go. Maybe they do this on Reddit, maybe they do this on a Substack, okay, or a server. They have their own server with their own chat room, and the major stockholders get on there and say, what should we tell the board? What should we tell the board to do? And what should the board tell the CEO to do? And what should the CEO strategize? And what should the strategy be? And who's going to write the code? And it's all computers. It's all AI. And so what is the unemployment level in this company that just went completely virtual and answers only to the shareholders? It's 100% unemployment, 100%, 100%. And even the data centers, the Amazon Web Services and the Microsoft Azure, that's being managed not by humans, but by artificial intelligence. A lot of it is already. I watched that revolution happen. A lot of it's being done by artificial intelligence. Now, it's not as smart as it probably needs to be. It's not as smart as it will become, but it was always tool chains. It's always tool chains. A person clicks a bunch of links, make sure that everything happens correctly. Yeah, looks good. And then they go on to the next assignment. It's tool chains. If that. So 82% unemployment in knowledge and data management industries. And teachers are knowledge managers, lawyers are knowledge managers, doctors are knowledge managers. Doctors don't treat patients. They manage treatments. So they're managing diseases, they're doing research, they're recommending pills and surgical procedures. They're approving these things for the insurance company. That all of that could be automated. All of that could be just completely decarbonized. No humans involved. So what do these people do? You're a doctor. You've got all these degrees, and you spent all this money, and you've got this huge debt. What do you do now? You're a teacher. You've got teaching credentials, and you've got all this experience, and you're out of a job. You're a lawyer. Your customers don't call you anymore. Your clients don't need you. They've got an online lawyer, and it does a hell of a job, faster and cheaper than you did it, and you're out of a job. And you're a coder, and you used to make 6 figures, and but now, people can request the applications be written or the data be gathered or something, and you're out of a job. And none of these people are driving to work, and none of these people are flying to conferences, and none of these people are flying to the main headquarters in Europe. It's just not happening. And then, of course, nobody has money. Now, there's a lot of discussion about what happens when people don't have money. One thing that happens, I suppose, people don't have money, is they can't participate in the economy as currently configured. Therefore, they die. I don't know how else to say it. They die. They can't participate. They don't have the token, the little piece of money that lets them go to the providers and get the things you need, the food, clothing, and the shelter you need. You can't pay your mortgage without the money. You can't buy the bread. You can't buy clothing. You can't send your kids to daycare. You can't, drive your kids to school. And what do? You get evicted from your home. Now you're homeless and you got your family and it's violent out there. Plus you're surrounded by literally hundreds of millions of people who have also lost their jobs, also by the same mechanism, also at the same time that you did. All these people are going to be affected all at the same time, pretty much within a few years of each other. There's going to be some low-hanging fruit. They'll probably they'll get rid of coders first because coders are difficult to deal with and they're expensive. But then they're going to get rid of all middle managers at these technology companies, and then they're going to get rid of teachers. What's the point of going to school? And so and we don't need teachers. And for the few people that do go to school for whatever they're doing, they're not doing it to get a job, but for whatever reason anybody's going to school, then we'll have an automated system. So pretty soon there's all these people walking up and down in front of the street with this dazed, glassy-eyed look. What happened? What just happened? What just happened? And relevant to my major problem, happens to be a wicked problem, they are not consuming fossil fuels. It goes further. Apple Computer fires all their employees. We're going to make nothing but money. We get $1,200 for an iPhone. 40% of that was manufacturing, but 20% of it of that cost of that profit is lost to employees, coders, designers, marketers, human HR. Fire them all. Just fire them. We're a virtual company now. We don't even have a board. Just fire them all. Don't need these people. Meat. Who needs meat? We're a virtual company. We just answer to the shareholders, and the shareholders get together once a week and decide what the priorities are because they own the company. They are the owners of the company. They are the shareholders. What they say goes. And if they think that we need to add another color to the iPhone lineup, pomegranate or something, well, then that's what we'll do. And okay, but those Apple employees who were paid six figures and had good money were all buying iPhones. They were also buying Teslas, and they were buying expensive sneakers, and they were going to Starbucks every morning in their car, in their Tesla, to the drive-up window to get their latte in the morning. And now all those things are just not happening. These people can't afford this stuff, and they're not driving to Starbucks on their way to work because they're not going to work. So what happens to Apple? Every company has a vested interest to be the first to adopt these approaches, to let artificial intelligence do everything, make all the decisions, fire all the employees, get rid of the middle managers, get rid of the CEO, do everything through automation. And the first company to do that has 100% profits. Not 40% like Apple, not 20%, not 10% like your supermarket, 100% profits. Every $1,200 spent on an iPhone is profits for the shareholders. And who's going to make these decisions to get rid of all these people and make them unemployed? The shareholders. They own the company. They can pull the trigger. They can get rid of these people. We don't need these people anymore. We have artificial people. We have artificial intelligence, and that's really cheap. It's 1/10,000th the cost to run a company with artificial intelligence than it is to run it with people. Anybody. There's nobody. They're all gone. 100% laid off. All of them are gone. The office has been dumped. We put it back on the market. We canceled the lease. We canceled the lease at a price. We had to pay to get out of the lease. Money well spent. Don't need the office. Don't need the internet fees. Don't need the electricity fees. Don't need any of it. And Apple does it, and then Nike does it, and then Google does it. I don't know who does it first, but it's going to fall like dominoes. And they're going to learn from each other. They're going to learn. Apple reported 100% profit increase, and then the products got better, and then the turnover of the products, the warranties and all this stuff stopped. It just wasn't any problems, and we got rid of all these people who were screwing up and stealing things and not coming to work and all this loss and all this everything. All that's gone. It's not even on the books anymore. All the benefits and everything, it's all gone. Oh, and then the companies that provide these benefits, the big health maintenance organizations, they implode because suddenly there's no income coming in from these companies. So all the HMOs implode. And the people who don't have money now because they don't have jobs can't afford the services anyway. So the clinics close And the doctors lose their jobs both to artificial intelligence, but also because they don't have any clients anymore because their clients don't have any money. And it just snowballs. It just keeps rolling like this. And pretty soon you have a completely imploded economic system, completely destroyed. It just destroys itself. It just tears itself to pieces by its own internal logic. It tears itself to pieces by its own internal logic. Yet this makes sense. It makes sense for my company. It makes sense for the stockholders, the shareholders. It makes sense that we can increase profit, we can decrease losses, decrease expenses, and slim down our company and streamline our product development. It just makes sense. It just internally it just makes sense. This is how we think. This is how we've always thought. We've always thought this way, you know, and it's always worked. Anytime we could get rid of a job description, we did. And anytime we could outsource something, we did. And it made sense at the time. And we made money. And the stockholders got more dividends. And the stockholders bought the stock. And we became more relevant. We got all these profits. Until at some point, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Why are we doing any of this? Do people really need iPhones? Well, iPhone sales are down. Why are iPhone sales down? We've never built a better phone. It's all being built by machines. It's all being built and tested and marketed by artificial intelligence. It's the most amazing product we've ever developed. The most recent iPhone, no hands touching it, no humans at all, no neurons from humans required. Not a single thing went into this from a human. No human input of any kind. Best phone we've ever made. It was made quickly and cheaply, and the actual costs have decreased by 20-fold in the manufacturing. There are no costs for employees, and the profits are like 99, 95%. And our sales are down. Our sales have cratered. What's happened? And then, somebody like me comes in and says, yeah, at the same time you were doing what you're doing to reduce your expenses and simplify your supply chains, everyone else was doing the same thing. And now unemployment overall in the US and the world stands at 82%. No one has any money. So you can give away your phones, you can give away your sneakers, you can give away your headsets, but you can't sell them. So this is interesting, isn't it? This is interesting. And so pretty soon, Apple, what? Do they go out of business? Do they become like Gucci and Ferrari, and they have really expensive products, $10,000 phones that are made by robots all over the world, and people buy them like hotcakes because they're amazing, and the people who buy them don't even look at the price. They don't even look at the price. So Apple sells, 10% of the phones they used to sell because only the elites are buying them, but they price them 10 times higher, and the profit ends up being the same because the elites just don't care. They buy them sight unseen. Oh, I like the pomegranate one. I had a pink one before, but it looked too girlish. So now I have a pomegranate one. I like that color. It's a nice aggressive Ferrari color, And as a matter of fact, I think I'll have my Ferrari repainted pomegranate to match my iPhone. Is that too much? Am I being too much? I think it's perfect. And I'll have to find some pomegranate nail polish. That's how the elites think, okay? And they don't even look at the price of the iPhone, and they don't look at the price of repainting their Ferrari. And what about the other people? What about the non-elites? Well, now that's a good question, isn't it? That's an interesting question. My wife and I play this game. She says, people need to stop driving and flying. We can save the planet by reducing carbon emissions from people driving and flying. And I say, yeah, no, we need to leave fossil fuels in the ground. And she says, well, that's the same thing. If you're not driving and flying, then you're not using fossil fuels. Yeah, but that's just a small percentage, some kind of a percentage of actual fossil fuel consumption. And so all these other things have to go away. And the way those things go away is actually when the economy implodes. Nobody gets those things anymore. The economy implodes and people don't get those things anymore. And then you reduce your carbon emissions because you don't have an economy based on fossil fuels. And the fossil fuels get left in the ground. And your iPhone is made entirely using electricity from renewable resources. And even the plastic coating in your iPhone, the little plasticky parts, could come from plant-based, plastics. We already have those. They make knives and forks, disposable knives and forks out of plant-based plastics, starches from corn and similar things. And you could make an iPhone. The case has metal parts too, but you could make the plasticky parts out of cornstarch. You don't really need fossil fuels. And if the factories are all running on electricity, and if the electricity is all renewable, then they're not using fossil fuels. And maybe you need fossil fuels to build factories, but you build factory once every 30 years. So that's a 30x reduction in fossil fuels compared to what you might think. And already factories no longer contain people. By and large, the factories they operate lights out. A lot of these modern factories, like Tesla factories or battery factories, iPhone factory floors, they operate lights out. Why spend money on the lights? There's nobody in there with eyeballs. People aren't even allowed in. The equipment has cages around it. Don't get anywhere near these robots. They'll kill you. And that's your fault if they kill you. You weren't supposed to be there. And so just don't have them in the factory at all. If something breaks, send a person in. Oh, wait, actually, we just bought a robot to fix robots. So don't even send a person in there. Because when we send people into factories to fix robots, the people get killed half the time. They don't know what they're doing. These machines are flailing around and people goes in there to fix it and he gets killed. It's a big payout, big loss. We have to train somebody all over again. Oh, wait. There's fixitrobot.com and they'll send you an AI enabled robot. And all you have to do is tell it, okay, there's a robot in my factory that's malfunctioning. Could you go in there and fix it? And so it goes in there to fix it. It can diagnose it. It can figure out what's broken. And it goes and looks up the parts online using the internet and orders the parts. And the parts come in and they're probably delivered by a robot. A drone of some kind delivers the part right to the factory. And the Fix-It robot takes the part and fixes the broken assembly line robot and puts it back on the assembly line. It's all done with robots, all of it. And the part was manufactured in a factory with no humans. And pretty soon, it's robots running robots, making products for robots, and robots are delivering them. And there's a few people, just a tiny sliver of the current human population that takes advantage of any of these things. And these people have all the money because everybody else lost their job. And all the money that would used to go to the employees now goes to the shareholders. And they've all got trillions of dollars, and they're all trillionaires. And if they want an iPhone, they just say, oh, yeah, send me an iPhone. And they won't even ask the price. They won't even ask the price. Just like they don't ask the price of the Ferrari. Oh, that's a nice Ferrari. That's pretty. I like that color. And when can I have one? I mean, that's the conversation. That's the entire conversation. I like that color. When can I have one? Can you deliver it to my house? Great. Well, here's my address. And let my accountant take care of the price of the whatever. Okay. And you go home. And by the time you're home and you roll into your home in your clunky old Lexus and a car pulls up a trailer and dumps your Ferrari, custom ordered. And when you're the elites, that's how it's done. Now, there's a lot of hair pulling and garment rending taking place right now on the internet about exactly what I just described. What are we going to do? We can't stop this AI revolution. We are headed for that horizon. It's not far away. We are going there on greased skids, okay? Every corporation wants this to happen. Apple, Nike, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, name them. Any company you can think of, every single one of them wants this. They want this. The workers don't want this, but the companies do. Okay, well, guess who wins? You are employed at will. And as soon as they can replace you, they will. And they have been doing that for scores of years, replacing people who are just redundant. And here's a small allowance. Here's $1,200 to go get yourself retrained. Old fart, 50 years old. We just laid you off. Here's $1,200 to go get retrained. That's funny. Enjoy the rest of your life. That's been going on for scores of years. You know they're going to do it. You know they're going to do it. I know they're going to do it. I've watched them do it. They are totally going to do this. They are totally going to kick us out the front door. I'm already retired, so I don't really care. But, my son and daughter are part of this. My daughter's a project manager. Well, now, it's cutting a little close, isn't it? I guess we'll see. I have one problem. It happens to be a wicked problem, which is global heating. I have said many times that I don't know how they're going to turn the fossil fuels off. But on that day, when finally they get around to seeing the light, when they have their visitation on the road to Damascus moment, when they finally realize that they have painted themselves into a corner, they're going to turn it off. I don't know how. It's actually really easy to do. There's lots of ways they could do it. I don't even have to know how they're going to do it. They'll figure out a way to do that. They're clever people and they have control of everything. They're going to figure out a way to do it. When they do, on that day, subsequent to that day, you will witness the following. No driving. Do I have to make that point? When they shut off the fossil fuels, there's no driving. Electric cars? Maybe. Do you have solar panels? Do you have batteries? So maybe you drive, maybe you don't. No driving, no flying, none. No movement of goods. Fossil fuels. 18-wheelers, cargo ships, cargo planes, fossil fuels. No movement of money. That's banking. If you don't have these other things, then you don't have purchases, you don't have jobs, you don't have salaries, you don't have 401ks, no movement of money and no jobs. When they turn off the fossil fuels, you're going to find out that all your corporate jobs, all your manufacturing, everything else was dependent on fossil fuels. That's what you're going to discover. Now, I could have added to that list when I made that list 10 years ago. I could have added to that list no food. I guess that lumps in with movement of goods. Food these days is kind of a manufacturing process. So yeah, I guess it's movement of goods. Yeah, you won't have movement of iPhones and you won't have movement of Doritos. Okay, food. But yeah, that's going to be a big one. Modern agriculture runs 100% on fossil fuels. Modern agriculture is dependent on fossil fuels for fertilizers, pest control, planting, harvesting, food processing, moving the processed food around, and all the supply chains that go with all of that. Every single thing I just mentioned also has its own supply chains, all of which is dependent on fossil fuels. So what happens when they turn off the fossil fuels? And I always say, I don't know how they do that. I don't know who does that. I don't know how they go about it. What's their planning? What's their strategy? How do they get people on board with doing this? Is it a treaty? Probably not. Is it a bunch of shadowy Illuminatis who go out there and surreptitiously send in combat troops to turn off the coal mines and turn off the pumps pumping the oil and blow up the gas pipelines? Is it the Illuminatis and their attack brigades that stop it? Or is it nuclear war? Is it the bombs and the blowing up and the destroying the pipelines? And is it that what it is? Is it a nuclear war that turns it off? Or is it a major stock market crash? All the stocks crash and the business go out of business and everything is destroyed and you can't get parts for your pipelines and nobody has time and money to get fuel into their car. Pretty soon the service stations are out of business and pretty soon the pipeline companies are out of business and everything comes crashing down because of the stock market. Okay, all those are scenarios, sure. Yeah, you can imagine how any of those things would do it. But AI, 82% unemployment. Wow. So that's not a nuclear bomb. That's not the Illuminati. This is just corporations doing what they do. We're saving money. We're reducing headcount. reducing complexity. We're cranking out a better product at a better price and a higher profit. And we can even charge you more. And look, the people we're selling to now are all the elites. They don't even look at the price. We can charge $10,000 for an iPhone. We can charge $10,000 for a pair of Nike sneakers. It doesn't even matter. They don't even care. We can charge whatever we want. And we don't have any employees. It's 100% profit. And why not? Let's do it. Now, what happens to all those people? What happens to the 99% of humanity that isn't in that category? The 99% of people for whom the price of an iPhone is a thing. It's even more than that. It's 99.99% of humanity that cares about the price of an iPhone. Really, you know what it is. There are very few people. There's 8 million people in the world. Maybe not even 8 million. Maybe there's 8 million people in the world for whom the price of an iPhone is not an issue. And they have the accountant pay the bill. They pick the phone, they walk out, they swipe a credit card. They don't even look at the cost. They don't even look. They swipe the credit card. It passes, of course, because it's got $1 million credit limit. They swipe the credit card and they walk out and they go down to the next shop to buy nail polish to match their iPhone. Yeah, that's maybe 1/100th of 1% of the current population can do that. Yeah, 8 million people can pull that off. They don't need us. They need an iPhone, and they don't care what the price is. They need a Ferrari, and they don't care what the price is. They won't even look at the cost. They won't. And they don't care that there were no human fingerprints on any part of any of that. They don't care about anything we do. Nothing. Nothing at all. Barely know we exist. Artificial intelligence. It's coming. It's here. It's scary. People are really worried. People who know this field even better than I do are a lot more worried than I am. A lot more worried than I am about what's going to happen when all the people are turned out to pasture. Because that's what's going to happen. Now, if that solves our problem with global heating, because nobody can buy fossil fuels anymore, then I guess we've solved our problem. It was a wicked problem. Is that solution worse than the original problem? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.